وبركاته. صلي وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد. Uh, Today we are gonna finish chapter 7. Sorry for being late. I was terribly sick. Um Mainly احنا اتكلمنا في the most important ideas in Oliver Twist. هنكمل مع بعض reading chapter 7 علشان خاطر نزود نفسنا ب more examples for writing, as we have agreed before that uh, everything I write I have to support it with evidence. طب evidence ده هجيبه منين؟ هجيبه من الستوري، هجيب examples من الستوري، هجيب quotes من الستوري، هجيب description من الستوري، هجيب incidents من الستوري. اوكي طيب let's read. Sometimes too he played the game already described. At last he began to want fresh air and begged Fagin to let him go out to work with Dawkins and Charlie Bates. طبعا we still talking about the naive and the innocent boy Oliver Twist. One morning the old gentleman allowed him to go. The three boys set out walking very slowly. Oliver wondered if they are going to work at all. Suddenly Dawkins stopped, laying his finger on his lips. He drew his friends back with great care. What's the matter? Asked Oliver. Quiet! Do you see that old gentleman near the bookshop? The old gentleman over there, said Oliver. Yes, I see him. He will do, said Dawkins. Charlie Bates. Perfect. Oliver looked at them in surprise. The two boys طبعا هو يعني from the very beginning هو فاكر in this was a game. That's why he was surprised when they were uh, uh, talking about a certain person, a real person. Oliver looked at them in surprise. The two boys walked across the road and came close behind the old gentleman. Oliver followed them, not knowing what to do. All of these are examples to prove the naivety and the innocence of Oliver's character. The old gentleman had white hair and gold glasses. He wore a green coat and carried a stick. He had taken a book from a shelf in front of the shop and he stood reading it with great interest. This old gentleman is very important to us. Why? Because he will have he will be of a great help to Oliver Twist later on. To Oliver's surprise and alarm, Dawkins put his hands to Oliver's surprise and alarm, Dawkins put his hand into the into the old man's pocket and took out a handkerchief. He gave it to Charlie Bates, and they both ran away quickly round the corner. At once Oliver understood the mystery of the handkerchiefs, and the watches, and the jewels, and Fagin's game. He stood still for a moment, full of fright and terror, and then he too began to run. Now he is he woke up from his sleep, from his brainwash. This was not a game. It was a training for being a thief. At that moment, the old gentleman put his hand in his pocket and, missing his handkerchief, turned around. He saw Oliver running away and thought, of course, that the boy had stolen his handkerchief. Stop, thief! He shouted and ran after Oliver with his book in his hand. Everybody in the street joined him in the pursuit. Stop, thief! They cried. Even Dawkins and Master Bates, even Dawkins, because they are thieves, they ran after Oliver. Why? It's a way of camouflaging in order not to be suspected. When they heard the cry, began to shout, "Stop, thief!" and ran after Oliver too. At last, someone hit Oliver and he fell to the ground, covered with dust. There was blood all over his face. A crowd collected. All these proofs and examples of Oliver's misery. In this, the boy, is this the boy? Asked the old gentleman. Yes, said the old gentleman. I am afraid it is. Poor boy. Poor boy. He has hurt himself. An officer of law made his way through the crowd and seized Oliver by the neck. Come, get up, he said. It wasn't me, sir. It was other boys, said Oliver. They are here somewhere. Now, the old gentleman will sympathize with Oliver. And this another example of God's protection or divine care. Because if the old gentleman didn't sympathize with Oliver, what will happen to Oliver? He was going to be jailed, imprisoned. But God doesn't want this. So what will happen? The old gentleman will sympathize with this poor boy. Oh no, they aren't, said the officer. This was true for Dawkins, and Shirley Bates had run off down the street. Come, get up. The old gentleman, don't hurt him. The officer of the law began to pull Oliver along the street. This treatment made. Suddenly, a man dressed in an old black suit came towards them. Thou divine cur. It's divine care that will help poor Oliver from the hands of the police. Stop! Stop! Don't take him away, he cried. Stop a moment. What is this? Who are you? Said the officer. I own the bookshop, replied the man, and I saw what happened. There were three boys, two others, and this one. Mr. Brownlow. Now, so the old gentleman is Mr. Brownlow. Was reading, and another boy took his handkerchief. This boy did nothing. He stood still and looked surprised. Then the boy must go free, said the officer of the law. He let go of Oliver's neck, and at once the boy fell down in faint. And this shows the innocence of Oliver. His face was as white as death. You see how Charles Dickens used lots of figurative language. You know, of course, what's meaning of figurative language. Figurative language means it's not literal. Means that doesn't if the word doesn't mean as it is. But I use images, similes, metaphors to describe, to make the reader more involved, to make the reader visualize everything. Poor boy, said Mr. Brownlow, the old gentleman. Call a courage somebody, please, at once. Now, there's sense of guilt from the old gentleman. Oliver was placed on one of the seats. The old gentleman got in and sat beside him. They rode away until the carriage stopped in front of Pleasant House in a quiet London street. Oliver was taken into the house and put to bed. Put to bed, put to sleep. And when Dawkins and Charlie Bates got home, Fagin was waiting for them. He said with an angry look, "Where's Oliver? Where is the boy?" The young thieves looked at him and then at each other, but they said nothing. "What happened to the boy?" cried Fagin, seizing Dawkins. "Speak out, or I will kill you." "An officer of the law took him away," answered Dawkins. "Let go of him." Let go of him means forget about him. He broke free and took a knife from the table. Fagin picked up a cup and threw it at Dawkins' head. It missed him and nearly hit a man who was entering the room at the moment. Bill Sikes was one of the gang. He has an influence on Nancy. Who is Bill Sikes? We will see now. "Who threw that at me?" said the man in a deep voice. He was a strong fellow of about 35. "Who, Miss Noah?" "Bill Sikes." With dirty clothes and angry eyes. His name was Bill Sikes. A white dog with its face scratched and torn in 20 different dog with its face, scratched and torn into 20 different places, followed him into the room. "What are you doing to those boys, Fagin?" said Bill Sikes. "I'm surprised they don't murder you." Fagin. "Quiet, Mr. Sikes. Don't speak so loud. You seem angry today." Sikes. "Perhaps I am." "Give him a drink, Fagin." Can you see how can you see the controlling character of Bill Sikes? Can you figure out and realize how Bill Sikes, how Fagin is scared from Bill Sikes? "I'm afraid," said Fagin, "that the boy may tell the officer of the law all about us and get us into trouble. Now, appears to us the main reason why Fagin was caring so much about Oliver. He was not afraid that Oliver would be jailed. He wasn't scared or caring or annoyed about his childhood, but he was caring about himself. He was worried about himself, about his gang, that Oliver would tell the police about them. So we must find him. Of course, they must find him. Sykes, yes, somebody must find him. The thieves sat thinking hard and looking at one another. Then the door opened and the two young ladies, Pat and Nancy, came in. Nancy, too, will have a great role in Oliver's life, so be very careful with her description. "The very thing," said Fagin. "Bet will go, won't you, my dear?" said Bet. "Where?" "To the officer of the law to find where Oliver is. He has been taken away, and we must get him back." "Nothing could me go." "Nancy, my dear, what would you say?" "No," said Nancy. "She will go," Sykes said. "No, she won't," said Nancy. Sykes. "She will, Fagin." At last, Nancy agreed to go to look for Oliver. She put on clean clothes, carried a little basket. She looked very good and sweet. "Oh, my brother, Oliver, my poor dear little brother, Oliver." She was pretending to weep. All of this reflects the idea of appearance versus reality. What happened to him? Where have they taken him? Oh, do have pity and tell me what has happened. What has been done with my dear boy? Said Fagin. Impel Sykes. Very good. You are fine. She was acting how she will pretend while searching for Oliver. When Nancy returned, she told them what happened to Oliver, that a gentleman got him, a gentleman called Mr. Brownlow, the man whose handkerchief Dawkins took, but they don't know where he lives. He must be found, cried Fagin. Charlie, you must watch that bookshop every day. Nancy, my dear, you we must find Oliver. Here's money for you. I shall shut up this house at once. It's no longer safe here. You know where to find me. Don't stop here a minute longer, my dear. The marks out of handkerchiefs sometimes too. He played the game already described. At last he began to want fresh air, and he begged Fagin to let him go out to work with Dawkins and Charlie Bates. Sorry, the wrong page. Fagin started to feel unsafe to keep staying in his home because Oliver knew the way his home, and he took the decision to disappear until they find Oliver and find him a say. With this word, he pushed them from the room. He then took the box which Oliver had seen, put it under his coat, and left the house. All his safety was in this box. Chapter 8, he finds a better home. Who finds a better home? Of course, it's Oliver Twist. Uh, I will make chapter 8 in another video عشان خاطر يبقى سهل إن انتوا to find the chapters. Chapter 8 is a little more interesting because it's going to talk about Mr. Brownlow's house and more secrets about Oliver Twist's identity. Hopefully that you would enjoy the video. If you like it, don't forget to subscribe in order to receive alarm for and notifications for the coming videos. Don't forget to share it علشان خاطر if you love yourself a little bit, you have to love the others in order God protect you and bless you. Love you all. Wish you the best. Waiting for you the next video. It's gonna be live too. Thank you and bye bye.